If your eyes landed on this message today, understand this. It's not a coincidence. Something in you is ready. Something in you has already shifted. You may not fully see it yet, but a deeper part of you knows you're close. Very close. Closer than you've ever been. The very fact that you're drawn to this message is itself a reflection of alignment, a sign, because only someone on the edge of transformation becomes sensitive to the message of it. You didn't randomly click this video. You were brought here by the very energy you've been cultivating, sometimes quietly, sometimes unknowingly. Neville Goddard often said that what you feel to be true inwardly becomes your outer experience. But long before it shows up in the world, there are signs. Not signs in the sky, not numbers on a clock, but signs within you. These inner shifts are the real proof that manifestation is already happening, that it's not coming, it's arriving. But here's what many miss. The most powerful signs are not external. They don't shout. They don't flash. They don't arrive with thunder. They whisper. They settle in slowly, like a change in the weather. You begin to notice that something feels different, not in your environment, but in your emotions, in your reactions, in your thoughts. And that's the first confirmation that the old version of you is dissolving and a new one is taking shape. Neville made it clear, signs follow, they do not precede. Meaning, when signs begin to appear, it's not a promise that something might happen. It's evidence that something already has. The inner shift has taken place. Your consciousness has moved, and now your world is catching up. So in this message, we'll explore the signs that you're entering the final stage of your manifestation, the stage where reality bends in seconds, the state where what you've longed for becomes inevitable. These are not random feelings. These are signals from your deeper self saying, it's done. Now let's begin. One of the clearest signs that your manifestation is near, sometimes just seconds away from unfolding, is a quiet, unexplainable certainty. Not the type of certainty that screams. It's not loud. It's not even something you try to create. It just shows up, almost like a calm inner voice saying it's already done. And the most fascinating part is that it's usually paired with a deep feeling of detachment. You're no longer obsessed. You're no longer checking your surroundings for signs of movement. You're no longer emotionally tangled in the outcome. And yet, you know, not from logic, but from something deeper, from alignment. Neville Goddard often spoke of this moment, when the inner feeling becomes so dominant, so natural, that you no longer question it. You no longer need validation from the outside because the assumption has taken root on the inside. You're no longer thinking about your desire, you're living from it. And when that happens, detachment occurs automatically. You're not faking distance. You're not pretending not to care. You genuinely feel at peace. It's the opposite of desperation. It's the moment you stop asking, when will it happen? And start thinking, of course it's mine. This is the emotional state where the subconscious accepts your new reality as fact. And once that happens, the world begins to rearrange itself with stunning speed. Feeling detached yet sure is not indifference. It's trust. It's spiritual maturity. It's emotional mastery. It's your inner world telling you you've let go of the old version of yourself. The rest is already set in motion. There's a moment in every true transformation when something shifts deep inside of you and the urge to check just fades. You no longer feel the need to watch the clock, analyze every message, reread affirmations 5 times a day, or scroll endlessly for proof that it's working. Why? Because you've stopped living in the question. You've started living in the answer. Neville Goddard taught that living in the end means to dwell emotionally in the fulfillment of your desire before it ever appears. And when you do that sincerely, the behavior of constantly checking or chasing no longer feels aligned with who you are. The version of you who already has it doesn't chase. The version of you who is already chosen doesn't check to see if they're remembered. The version of you who is already aligned doesn't worry about timing. This shift doesn't always happen with a big realization. Often, it's subtle. One morning, you wake up and you just don't feel the urge to reach out. You don't need to search for signs it's working. You don't need reassurance because internally you feel complete. You begin to walk through life with a sense of ease. Not because everything has arrived yet, but because you're no longer in resistance. When you lose the urge to check, you've actually begun to own the outcome. You're embodying it. You're becoming it. And that's when life responds the fastest, because you're no longer delaying it with the energy of doubt. You're no longer postponing it with over-identification to time. You're living in alignment. So if you find yourself naturally forgetting to worry, if you're no longer tracking every detail of how and when it's coming, understand this. That's not a mistake. That's a sign. You've shifted. You're already moving with the outcome, and reality is seconds away from catching up. There comes a point where the unknown doesn't scare you anymore. In fact, it starts to feel like a sacred space, a place where you're no longer trying to fill every gap with answers or force every moment into a plan. You start to feel at peace with not knowing exactly how things will unfold, and that peace is a powerful sign. It means your inner world has begun to trust what the outer world hasn't caught up to yet. Most people live in anxiety because they think control equals safety. But you're now stepping into something higher, alignment over control. And when you can sit calmly in the unknown without panic, it's because your subconscious has accepted that the outcome is certain. You've rehearsed the end scene enough times, with enough emotion and clarity, that you don't need to see the full script anymore. You already feel the ending. That calmness in uncertainty isn't passive. It's the boldest form of faith. You begin to feel less reactive. Things that used to trigger you, like a delay, a message that doesn't come, or silence from someone you care about, no longer knock you off center. Where before you would spiral into self-doubt or fear, now there's something in you that gently says, "It's fine. I know what I've created." That shift is not small. That's not denial. That's transformation. Because your reaction to the world is one of the clearest signs of what state you're living from. Neville always said that the world is a mirror. When you change your reactions, you change your reflection. When you stop assigning panic to silence, when you stop labeling delays as rejections, when you stop interpreting the present as proof of failure, you are operating from a new self. You are no longer the version of you who needs constant external feedback to feel worthy. You've internalized the outcome, and now your nervous system, your thoughts, and your emotional baseline have upgraded. You don't react out of fear anymore. You respond with calm, knowing. This shift isn't something you force. You don't try to become a more peaceful person to get results faster. That would still be control, not trust. What happens is that the more you dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled, the more your reactions naturally begin to soften. You stop taking things personally. You stop watching every moment like it's a test. You're no longer attached to every movement around you because you know that your reality isn't created by what's happening out there. It's shaped by what you've already accepted as true in here. And that truth becomes unshakable the moment you stop needing validation from what you see and start living from what you know. So if you've felt that shift, if you've noticed yourself breathing more deeply in silence, smiling without evidence, or letting go of old fears before they spiral, then something has already changed. It means your dominant vibration is no longer fear or lack. It's peace. And peace is not the absence of movement. Peace is the presence of belief. A belief so strong that even when your world is quiet, your soul is still sure. And then something beautiful starts to happen. You begin to notice little things lining up, not because you were looking for them, but because they seem to find you. A song plays with lyrics that echo your thoughts. You see a name you were thinking about. A door opens where there seemed to be none. These things might seem random to others, but to you they feel deeply meaningful. Why? Because they mirror the state you've been dwelling in. These aren't just coincidences. These are what Neville Goddard would call the echo of a new assumption. They are outer movements stirred by an inner cause, your consistent assumption, your felt truth. When you live from the end, the world doesn't stay the same. It begins to respond in small but unmistakable ways. And it's important not to dismiss these moments as too small or not enough. These micro-alignments are like the first signs of spring after a long winter, subtle but deeply significant. They tell you the cycle has turned, the seed you planted is breaking the surface. But here's the key. You're not chasing these signs. You're not glued to your screen, hoping something will pop up. You're simply living from the inner experience you've chosen, and the signs appear without your effort. That's how you know they're real. They didn't come because you begged for them. They came because your inner world shifted, and the outer world had to follow. This is how manifestation begins to accelerate. You drop the timeline, you drop the need, and in doing so, you create space for flow. And all of this brings us to one of Neville Goddard's most misunderstood but powerful statements. Signs follow, they do not precede. This means the signs you're hoping for don't come to convince you before your inner shift. They arrive after the shift has occurred. The sign is not the cause, it's the result. Most people get this backward. They think, once I get a sign, I'll believe it's working. But Neville is clear. Once you believe, the signs will follow. They're not permission to believe. They're proof that you already did. That's why obsessing over external confirmation keeps you stuck. Because it places your faith outside of you. It says, I'll feel okay when I see movement. But the truth is, movement begins inside. It begins the moment you persist in the unseen, the moment you let your assumption take root in feeling, not fact. When that happens, when belief becomes dominant and natural, the signs start to show up almost effortlessly, not because you need them, but because they reflect the truth you've already chosen. So if you're seeing little things shift, if you're noticing symbols or synchronicities that match your desire, if you're suddenly feeling recognized by the world in subtle ways, you're not imagining it. You're not crazy. You're aligned. You're watching the outer world mirror back what your inner self has already accepted. These are sacred confirmations that you're in the right state at the right time, on the right path. But remember, you don't chase signs. You become the signal. You radiate the version of you who already has it. And life has no choice but to echo back what you've been vibrating all along. When we talk about signs, it's not about superstition or chasing lucky numbers. It's about confirmation. Real signs are not proof that something might happen. They're subtle reflections that something has already shifted inside of you. They are the natural byproduct of a new internal assumption. You didn't force the signs, you didn't demand them. You simply changed your state, and life responded. That's what makes them powerful. Neville Goddard taught that your reality is shaped not by what you want, but by what you are conscious of being. That means when signs begin to appear, whether it's peace in your chest, calmness in your thoughts, or synchronicities in your day, they're not promises of the future. They're proof that your identity has already started to shift. You're not trying to manifest anymore. You're being the version of you who already has. And that difference is everything. It's easy to overlook these signs because they don't always come wrapped in fireworks. Sometimes the most powerful sign is the quiet moment when you notice you're not worried anymore, or when you realize you didn't react to that same trigger, or when you look back at the week and realize you didn't beg the world for reassurance. These moments are worth more than any external sign because they tell you one thing. Your self-concept has evolved. That shift in self-concept is the core of manifestation. Because once your concept of self changes, everything you attract must change with it. If you've assumed yourself to be loved, respected, abundant, successful, then you will naturally begin to attract relationships, events, and outcomes that reflect that version of you. That's why signs are meaningful, not because they're magical, but because they mirror your internal position. Neville would often say, you do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. And these signs, they're showing you what you've become. Now let's go one step further. What happens in the exact moment you feel it real? That moment is sacred. It's the moment where thought and emotion fuse into identity. It's when you go from thinking, I want this, to feeling I am this. In that instant, manifestation begins, not in the world, but in consciousness. That is the seed being planted. That is the internal creation. And as Neville taught, creation is finished. The moment you feel it, it exists. The rest is simply the unfolding of what has already been accepted. This moment is not dependent on your environment. You could be broke and feel wealthy, alone and feel loved, uncertain and still feel grounded. Because the moment you stop letting the outer dictate your inner and instead let the inner become your authority, you have entered the state of the wish fulfilled. Neville called this the secret of all secrets. Feeling is the secret. It's not just about visualizing what you want. It's about entering into the emotional frequency of already having it. When the emotion becomes natural, when the assumption feels real, when you can sit with it long enough that it no longer feels like pretending, that's when you're closest. That's when seconds start to matter. Because reality doesn't take time, it takes alignment. Time only enters the picture when your inner world is still questioning, still doubting, still rehearsing the lack. But when you drop all of that and just enter the feeling and stay there, something profound begins to happen. The world shifts, sometimes gradually, sometimes suddenly, but always in response to who you've become. And here's something even deeper. When you feel it real, you also stop needing the outcome to complete you. That's how you know it's real. You don't crave it anymore, you embody it. You don't ache for it, you express it. You don't pursue it. You carry the energy of one who already has it, and that energy moves through the world without effort. You'll notice your posture changes. The way you walk, talk, breathe, and relate all starts reflecting your new identity. And people can sense it, even if they don't understand it. Your energy communicates before your words ever do, and that energy is what invites change, quickly and quietly. So if you've had moments, however brief, where you felt the shift, where the desire felt done within you, honor that. Return to that. Those are not moments of imagination. They are moments of creation. Don't chase the result. Chase the feeling, because once you feel it consistently enough, the result must come. Not because you forced it, because you became it. Once you begin recognizing the signs, the peace, the detachment, the inner certainty, it's important to understand one thing. Your job is no longer to make it happen. Your job is to stay in flow, to stay faithful to the new self, to keep walking, not as the one who's hoping, but as the one who's already become. This is where many people subtly fall out of alignment. They see the signs, feel excited, and then immediately return to the energy of is it working. That shift back into doubt or impatience actually pulls them out of the state that brought the signs in the first place. So how do you stay in the flow? First, remember, the feeling is the key. Feeling doesn't just mean emotion. It means assumption plus embodiment. It's when you live, breathe, and move from the end result. When you recognize the signs, let them strengthen your inner knowing, not trigger your outer obsession. Let them affirm that you're on track, not tempt you to start watching the clock again. Second, simplify your inner world. Cut down on overthinking, on consuming too many teachings, or jumping from one method to another. That mental noise only clutters your channel. When you've already felt it real, you don't need more input. You need inner quiet. You need stillness. That's where certainty lives. Neville didn't teach you to rely on 10 techniques. He taught you to assume the end and to persist in that assumption. The more you simplify, the stronger your emotional signal becomes. Third, protect the new identity you built. Once you've assumed yourself to be loved, chosen, successful, whatever your desire may be, you must become a guardian of that state. That means filtering what you allow into your mind. That means not entertaining conversations or thoughts that pull you back into the old version of you. That means when doubt creeps in, and it will, you gently return, not with panic, not with fear, but with love, with compassion, with awareness. You say to yourself, I've already chosen who I am. And that's who I return to now. That simple act of recentering is more powerful than hours of forced effort. Because when you return again and again to the state of the wish fulfilled, that state eventually becomes your default. And when it becomes your default, reality must follow. Finally, stay grateful, not for what's coming, but for what already feels done. Gratitude is not just a polite emotion. It's an energetic signature of completion. It tells the mind and body, I already have what I need. Gratitude brings closure to the loop of desire. It quiets the grasping. It grounds you in the now. And when you're grounded in the now, the future rushes to meet you. So don't chase what you already feel is yours. Don't dilute the power of your assumption by treating signs like unfinished business. Receive them as evidence. Receive them as reward. Receive them as reflections of your transformed identity. Because that's what they are. They are echoes of a shift that already happened inside of you. You didn't ask the world to show you. It simply reflected you. And now, the conclusion. Listen carefully, because what you do next matters more than what you've done before. If you're seeing the signs, if you've felt moments of deep certainty, unexpected peace, calm in the unknown, or detachment from the outcome, don't ignore that. Those are not fleeting feelings. They're not mood swings. They are confirmation that your inner world has changed. And when the inner world changes, the outer world must follow. You don't need to push anymore. You don't need to ask again. You don't need to do more. You simply need to remain. Remain in the assumption. Remain in the state. Remain in the energy of already having received. That is the practice. That is the discipline. That is the secret. Everything you desire is already yours. If your feeling can hold it, so hold it. Feel it. Return to it daily. And trust that life is not ignoring you. Life is responding to you. In fact, it always was. It was just waiting for you to stop trying to get and start learning how to be. Because when you become, everything else becomes possible. If this message resonated with you, if it helped you remember what you already know deep inside, then do two things. Stay in your state. Support this message by liking the video and subscribing to Ignis Mindset. Your support fuels content like this and helps others find their way back to their truth. And remember, you are not here to chase. You are not here to beg. You are not here to wait. You are here to assume, to feel, to become. And once you do that, reality won't need permission to shift. It will shift because of you.